All right, it is 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting has been noticed at Evans Print and Media Group, WCOW Radio, Magnum Radio, La Crosse Tribune, Sparta City Hall, and the Sparta Free Library. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Oh,
I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Scholze to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, how many are there? 6 of us, 6-0. Public input, I have none. I'm assuming there is none. All right. Reports, item A, map data report. Ms. Brueggeman.
Thanks. So tonight I just want to give you an update on our measures of academic progress, which is our MAP growth testing that we do in our district. It's our district assessment that we give for grades 1 through 10 for both reading and math. We give the test 3 times a year, in the fall, the winter, and then again in the spring. It's an adaptive test that assigns a RIT score, which is a RASH unit, that measures student achievement and growth over time. And it really gives our teachers immediate and regular feedback versus that state test that's only once a year, and we don't get that data until like August. So teachers can take this data and they drill down to specific skills or strands in math and reading, so they can know what each student needs to continue to learn. And they're able to group their students to differentiate their learning based on their needs and readiness. So a reminder, a RIT score, that RASH unit, is that score that measures that student achievement and growth over time. It's a stable scale, so it accurately measures the student's performance regardless of how old they are or what grade level they are in. So kind of like that measurement of my height. I can be a tall 3rd grader, and that's still going to be my height. So it's a nice indicator of where we are, or where our students are. So how do we use the data? Teachers can use that data to set goals with their students. They can set goals with their class. Our middle school is actually setting school goals this year to try to really use this data in effective ways. Our PLCs also look at the data and connect them to our essential standards. They discuss the skills, what the students need to understand, know, and do. They talk about instructional strategies to continue to engage our students. Again, they group our students. And actually, some of our teachers use the reading and writing and math across other content areas. For example, at the middle school, all of the content areas, art, PE, have goals based on our MAP data. So first, I'm going to give you a little lens of our reading data. I'm going to show you a couple different graphs. So the first graphs are going to compare the district grade level data based on achievement. So you're going to see that fall RIT score, you're going to see that winter RIT score, and then I have that NWEA normed mean RIT score. That's like the target we want our grade level to be at for the winter. So here's our reading, grades 1 through 4. That first bar is our fall data. Second bar is our winter data. And that yellow bar, that last bar, is the norm that we're shooting toward. As you can see, we aren't quite there yet this winter with grades 1 through 4, but we can see some growth from fall to winter. For our 5-8 students, again, you'll see our fall, winter, and the norm. I want to point out grade 6 met that winter norm, and grade 8 actually exceeded the norm by a point. And then 9 and 10, we see a little dip from fall to winter for both 9th grade and 10th grade. Now I'm going to show you the reading data that compares our schools. So each school also, we can break up that data to know how our schools are doing. So I'll have our current RIT scores for each of our schools for the winter. And then also I have that winter target score, that norm score also. So here's our grade levels 1 through 4 by school. You can see Montessori for grades 1, 2, and 3 exceeded or met that goal. And we have Cataract is the first one, Montessori is the second, Herman's our third, and that last bar is the norm. 5 through 8, again, this is still reading. Again, you can see Montessori has exceeded for the norm for grades 5 and 6. STEM exceeded 6, 7, and 8 in all categories. And MetaView met the norm and exceeded the norm for 7th and 8th grade. And here's reading maps for grade 9, high points and high schools, and then the mean. You can see High Point only has 9 students in this data, so we have to be a little bit careful with what we see with High Point's data. We don't have High Point's data for 10th grade because there's only 3 students, so I don't have a bar graph for the 10th grade. So the bar graphs you saw were all about the achievement where all of the students met for the RIT score through the district. I also pulled this from the NWA MAP website. They also measure growth for our students across the district. So those diamonds are the projected growth through the NWEA. So the NWEA has a formula that they determine how much each grade level for reading should grow. And so those diamonds indicate where we want our students to grow to. And then those bars are the actual growth of our students. So you can see 1st grade was real close to meeting that growth. 3rd through 8th did a great job meeting that growth or exceeding that growth expectations. So then I got a little curious and went back to last year's because I wanted to see how did it look last year at this time for our growth from fall to winter. So this is last year's, and we had a lot of gaps last year in our data. So again, going back to this year's growth, we see a nice, those charts really did a nice job. Our students are starting to do a nice job. Go forward. You went back. Okay. I don't know what's wrong. Keep going. You're going the wrong way. Forward. There we go. Now we're going to look at some math data. Again, we're going to compare the district grade level data based on the achievement. You'll see the fall RIT, the winter RIT, and then that target score, that norm. So here's 1 through 4, fall, winter, and that norm. Grade 1 exceeded that winter norm. 5 through 8, grade 7 met the norm, and we have some work to do in some of the other grades. And then the 9th and 10th, you can see 9th grade exceeded the norm and 10th grade is really close for math. Then again, we'll compare the math data, comparing the schools. You'll see the current winter RIT score for each of the schools. And then of course, that last bar will be the target. Here's 1 through 4. I thought it was very interesting that grade 3 was pretty much even across the board. And then Herman for grade 1 exceeded that norm. Grades 5 through 8, again, I don't know where STEMs for 6th grade went, but anyway, STEMs did exceed for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then grade 9, we have High Point. Again, they only have 9 students in that data. And then the high school did exceed that norm goal also. Then again, I pulled that growth math data. This is this year's growth for math from fall to winter, that expected growth. You can see 1st grade exceeded that growth, and 5 through 10th grade all met growth or exceeded growth. Then I have last year's data. Also, that growth, again, looks very similar to that reading. And then again, this is this year's. So what do we do with the data? So at the elementary school, teachers use that, they analyze the data per their class. They have a bunch of questions that they kind of answer. They determine the highest performing strand or skills for both reading and math. They also look at the lowest performing skills for reading and math, so they can know what their classes are really good at and what they still need to work on. They analyze their class growth, which is that chart that you can see there. This is one of our classrooms. I deleted which classroom teachers they were and what grade level it was. But this was showing that these classes broke up how many students took the test, how many met or exceeded their written goal, and what percentage of their class had done that. They also group their students based on needs for their small group instruction. Then I have another example of an elementary reflection by a grade level. They reflected that geometry was their highest strand across the grade level, that all three of their reading strands were really similar across all of the classes. And so they came up with some ideas that they can work on in their class. They can use read works, just reading books so all kids are enjoying what they're reading at their level. They can small group their readers, and they can link that MAP score to their IXL learning. So IXL is one of our technology programs that they can link where the students are and give them tasks that are at their level. And then you can see their math ideas also, assigning pathways to students, using reflex math, and creating their own problems and small group work. At the middle school, as I said, the middle school has been setting school-wide goals based on analyzing the data by the skills. So as you can see, the reading goal is 65% of the students at Meadowview Middle School will perform an average or above MAP at reading for the skills in spring 2022. So they took each grade level and did how many students were at or above where we wanted them to be achievement-wise. And then they set some goals, and then they've reflected on that. Some already met their goals, so they're going to revise that goal and up it from the 65%, because you can see for grade 8, they already exceeded that goal, so they're going to up their goal for grade 8. So they really use the data to target intervention based on the skills and reflect. Another way they have also used the data at the middle school is they've also analyzed the data by class. This is a math class. This is our actual data. Again, I took the teachers out of the data, and they were looking at growth. How are the math classes, how were each math class growing? So you can see the fall score just for that class, and you can see the winter score. And then if they met their targeted growth, those ones that are highlighted all met the growth of 3 or more. And one class didn't meet that growth. So that PLC team will talk about what kind of instructional strategies can we implement to keep all of our students growing. If you look at the data, those students in those classes are exceeding the norm. However, we still want all of our students, even if they're high flyers, we want them to continue to grow at the rate that the NWEA expects it. And then one other note, we are going to be working with the high school since they didn't implement the MAP last year. We're going to be working with them this winter on how they can use their data to help their instruction. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
So
we would use multiple. This is one, again, temperature that we take 3 times a year. And we link the skills and the strands that are in our MAP data to what we're teaching in the classroom. We also have assessments within those curriculums that they do per unit, quizzes. So we use the whole picture. You can, using just one set of data points aren't typical for determining if it's successful or not, but that it is an indication that we can look at.
are these programs that we use for our curriculum, are they successful? Are they being successful? And how how long is it gonna take for us to see, regardless of COVID, how long is it gonna take for us to start seeing these scores where we're meeting our expectations? Or do we need to look at something different and come up with a different plan for the curriculum?
Great question. One of the things, research is 3 to 5 years when you're implementing anything new. So I believe our reading program is at year 3 at the middle school. All the other programs would be less than 3 years old at this point. So we'll continue to look at that. That's a great question, and we will continue to analyze our resources as we move forward. We also have to think about implementation and make sure that our teachers are implementing those resources to fidelity and using our guaranteed and viable curriculum resources, that our essential standards, our proficiency scales, all of the work they're doing on a daily basis to make sure that we're implementing the resource to fidelity. Good. Yep, no problem.
Mr. Lyden? I think to take a stab at a little different angle on the MAPS portion of it, the measures of academic progress is probably the most commonly used assessment, generalized assessment that is not required by the state. And it gives us very clear, detailed achievement data and growth data that teachers have access to immediately. And we have that fall, winter, spring, so we can test 3 times a year. And that growth can kind of fluctuate throughout the year, but that mid-level reporting can help us make some adjustments if we need to. So to answer your question, as far as does this measure whether or not what we're doing is working, I would say, based on what I'm seeing, yes. And it is working. But it's not going to be a turnaround. This is the long path, right?
Right, no, and I totally get that.
Okay.
I actually enjoy the math testing just because I like to see how my own student has progressed in his RIT score compared to his peers. I just want to make sure that all the money that we've put into this, that we're going to start seeing the results. Is ultimately, that ROI that we're looking for, and that accountability that we're looking for as a board to make sure that things are happening. Like they may not happen as quick, but that they're still happening.
The key to that ROI, 2 things, is to not be changing up new programs, new initiatives, new, because there's a learning curve in the right? So we're actually, in a few of our things, our programs, our reading workshop, I want to say, we're moving well beyond the packaged program to making it ours and enculturating it. And that is really helping. That's when you see our students using the strategies for reading. That's part of what we do and who we are, right? So all this money we put into, we're going to put that money into some resources, and yes, we want them to work. So and to make sure that we have high quality staff that are trained and we have really done a lot of work around targeting our professional learning so that our teachers are implementing the instruction the Spartan way, right? So, and that is a process. That's a culture change. That's a huge culture shift. And we're seeing some very, very good results. And I'll just hats off to Jody and her team, and the work at Meadowview Middle School has been really, I hear a lot, not that every school isn't doing good things, but I just have to say it's fun when you watch grade level after grade level, they start to get it. You see the schools start to get it. You see the evidence that we're seeing is evidencing that it's taking hold and traction and moving forward.
And I think one thing to look at, Mr. Gonke, if you could go back a slide. Okay, yeah, so Ms. Brueggeman, if you could just elaborate on this. We're looking at our fall math and our winter math. You look at the MAP norms, there's a 3-point difference, correct?
Correct.
So you're stating that 9 out of 10 of our classes met or exceeded that 3-point move, correct?
Correct. According to NWA, that's not a goal that we set. They
Sure.
set the goals for this grade level.
Yep. So
And each
while-
grade level is different.
Absolutely. So while we're not meeting the norm number, our district from fall to winter is showing at least a 3-point move in the positive direction, correct?
Yep. That's
Thank-
where that growth chart really became important because it kind of gave you that big picture across the district, how we're trying to grow our students. And if we focus on growth with our students right now, then the achievement will come because we want every student to grow no matter where they are. If they're a high achiever, we still want them to grow at the rate we want them to grow at. If they're not quite there yet, they're basic or below basic, we want them to grow at the rate that they're supposed to grow at.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Lyden. Could you go back to the slide on reading? I didn't catch the number all the way back before you went into the math.
For growth or achievement?
The, right there, that's the one that I'm wondering about. Why is 9 not have any bar on it?
Oh, because they had a 218 in the fall and a 218 in the winter. So they had a solid growth, so they had a growth of 0. So there's no purple. And we wanted 1.5 according to the NWEA.
Does that have an impact on the average, with the formula that they use, reflecting on that graph?
It's all normed. So it's their norm. It does not impact the graph.
Okay. I'd like to make a comment. I think
Sure.
the graphs are indicative of what when I first came on, was to go ahead and be able to track. Before then, we didn't have a program that thoroughly tracked our data to show the growth, where's the norm are and how we go forward. And the graphs that you presented tonight are very good indicators that there is a steady growth in the grades going across there. Thank you.
Yep. And we always have work to do. So, I mean, there are things in our data that we want to improve upon, and our teachers are digging into that data and really trying to use the data to help their instructional practices.
And, that don't take the celebration as that we're not looking at potential pinch points and places where we can add more support, because that is part of the work of managing everybody up and keeping our continuous improvement model moving forward, right? So looking with a very critical eye with our PLCs. What's cool about this is we can track data longitudinally by class and by grade and with the norm. So that gives us a lot of places to triangulate data to really get a sense of how our students are doing academically.
Other questions for board members? Go ahead, James.
I'm not sure if I'm looking at this right, but it's the diamonds.
Yep.
It appears to me that grades 3 and 4 did well in the reading, but when you take a look at the math as well, the grades 5, 6, 7th, and 8th seem to be doing better than the rest. Is there what's?
Well, that is where we have put a lot of those new resources into 5, 6, 7, 8. So going back to Ms. Presswood's comment are the resources working? That might be one of the indicators that says yes. I'm not 100% sure because I can't look at just one resource and say that that's what it is. But we definitely digging into that data, looking at our practices, and math at the elementary school is the next place that we are going to look at. Do we need a new resource or not?
So a follow-up question, why didn't we do everybody all the grades?
For a new math program?
Well, it sounds like you focused in on the middle school?
Yep, so 3.5 years ago when I came here, the middle school's data was, needed the most work. They had a new leadership. They had, so Mr. Ott brought me in and said, look at our data. We're really struggling. How can you help support us? So he brought me in right away my first year, and we looked at the data, started looking at resources, working with CISA 4 to put in a process on how to effectively choose high quality resources for the middle school. And then continuing to work on those essential standards, proficiency scales. What does proficiency look like? What do we want the students to know, understand, and do? So we've put some of those processes in at that middle school because the data wasn't from the state testing, they were struggling.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I would go back and say that you can ask why not, but maybe the better question is why did we start where we did and why did we do what we did? It's kind of like if you're looking at a room that's a complete mess, you start where the biggest things are. And usually as you clean things up, you find that, oh, there's this whole other layer and this whole other layer. So we're peeling back an onion and as we do that, we're developing systematic consistency, because remember that part of the vision here is that the experience for the learner from pre-K to 12th grade, they shouldn't have to relearn what school is every year or every 3 years. There should be that consistency in how school is in Sparta. So when we've done what we've done, it's because that was the logical first place to start with the best information that we had at the time.
I think I might add to that too, is that the board at that time that adopted this data collection and map reading is to see if it worked. It was on a probationary or pilot type program, in that we would start out with the grades based on the need that was brought forward, the explanation. So it was looked at to prove itself and the money that we put into it. And that was where we started, as I recall, on that. And that's why the road that we're going down is to go ahead and improve with the data that we have, and then go ahead and further put it into the other grades as we go along, as it proves. So, go back information.
I just had a quick question. Make sure I heard it right. So you said the middle school efforts were the oldest at 3 years, right? With the MAP data. How did we track this before MAP was implemented?
Well, they had Aspire
Okay.
testing, but the Aspire interim testing didn't give us a good lens of how they would perform on the state test. It's a little more complicated, but there was multiple tests. So pre-K 2, I believe, was implementing PALS, and 3, 5 were implementing MAP, and 7 or 6, 8 were implementing Aspire. Or it might have been even, it might have been 6, 10 was implementing that Aspire interim test. So it was really difficult to track my first grader to my 10th grader because there were different assessments every 3 years. So that's why in 2019, we changed to 110 all MAP testing versus all of the different types of testing that we were doing, to give us a better lens of how our students were really doing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other further questions? Hearing none. Item B, AGR report. Ms. Brueggeman.
So AGR stands for Achievement Gap Reduction. This is DPI, mandatory reporting in February. So to give you an update on where Southside, Cataract, and Herman are doing in the AGR report. So again, AGR stands for Achievement Gap Reduction. It's a 5-year contract. The schools that are a part of the AGR program must implement one of the 3 strategies or a combination of the 3 strategies. It's for all of our K-3 classrooms. And the strategies that we can choose from per the DPI are one-to-one tutoring, instructional coaching for teachers, or maintaining an 18-to-1 or 30-to-2 classroom. So the report is intended, you also must report the intended strategies to the DPI at the start of the school year. So our principals fill out this report, and then again, they'll have to fill out the report at the end of the year. They set performance objectives to try to reduce the achievement gaps for our low-income students for math and reading. A specified assessment will be determined, and for our kindergarten students, it's our PALS assessment and a mini math assessment. And then for our grades 1 through 3, we use our MAP data. And then, of course, per the DPI, we must report to the board every 3 times a year. So our school strategies are the same across the district. For Cataract, Herman, and Southside, they all use district instructional coaching as their strategy. And so here are the performance objectives for the kindergarten. And for reading, PALS, 80% of the students will be at or above norm grade level. And you can see the fall and winter scores for both schools. And then the math, 80% of our students will be able to count to 100. And you can see the fall and winter scores. For reading, for grades 1, 2, and 3, it's the same goal. Measures of academic progress are MAP data. 80% of students will be at or above the norm grade level mean RIT score. You can see our fall and winter scores for Cataract and Herman. Math, same objective. 80% of students will be at or above that norm grade level mean RIT score. Grade 2. This one's for reading. And grade 2 math. And grade 3 reading. And grade 3 math. So the final AGR report will be given in June. Are there any questions?
Gosh. I guess one of the basic questions I have is, are these realistic scores?
Is 80% a realistic goal? Is that your question? Well, we always want to have a high goal for our students. We want to get as close to that goal as we want, and hopefully one year we will achieve that goal. So I think Mr. Oswald is in
Mr. Oswald, could you explain a little bit, seeing as how you're the expert on the issue? My concern is that we have realistic goals, and to be able to have our students achieve the goals and not feel that they failed somehow by not getting those goals. And so it's important for me, even though DPI, sends down what we gotta do. But if it's not realistic, it doesn't do anybody any good. So my question is it realistic?
Yeah, I believe that the 80% is a realistic goal. Again, we want to set a standard that we believe every student can achieve. And while it takes every student a different path to get there, I don't believe we should lower the standard with this. 80% of the students is where we want to be. And, that's a recommendation. That's something that we feel that we can achieve. And as you can see from the data every year, depending on the grade, kids get closer to it than other grades do. And that's a consistent thing that I think is important for staff to know we should always be also trying to achieve. So while the ultimate goal, like Ms. Brueggeman said, would be to have, hit that goal every year of the 80%, I don't think we should ever lower it.
No, my indication is not to lower it. It's just that if you're shooting for the moon and you only got enough fuel to get, across, realistically, what can we attain? What can we expect that we'll be able to realistically look at it as a score? That's what I'm getting at. Not to lower it, but maybe it's too low. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a good goal that is set where if we get 80% of our students there, then I think we're doing a pretty good job. So obviously that's probably more of a discussion that would take a lot longer to discuss and determine if there is a different level that we should achieve. But to lower our standards on any of that just isn't a place that I don't think we want to go. I don't think we're out of line with anything. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also just like to remind us that this is just per the school. The kids, when they take the MAP test, they have their own personal goals that they can set based on the MAP data and projections from MAP. So as each kid takes that MAP score, when those teachers are having conferences with the student on where their goal is, they look at that projected growth, because MAP does give, for whatever I scored, they'll give a projection for my score and where I should be for the next test.
Okay,
So,
it's individual.
yep, it's individual. This is a bigger report, but that's a great question. Thanks.
The teachers have this information, correct? So they can see where they were in the fall, and they can see that some of those classes have dropped for the winter. Is this being looked at in the PLCs? Are the teachers, of course, know they have these resources to do what needs to be done to bring them back up to get closer to that 80%? I'm assuming, but at what point do we look at all these reports and all this data and say something needs to change?
So this report is the requirement that we just have to do as part of the reporting to DPI. And so it's that 80%. The previous report that Ms. Brueggeman shared shows all those classes and how they do look at it, and how we make the adjustments, and how each PLC assigns individual students, like in IXL, like Ms. Brueggeman was explaining. You can put what level the student needs to be at, and then that individual student can work towards that. So that's one resource that we use that way. They go back to look at the standards to ensure that the standards are aligning with what the MAPS is asking, because the MAPS is a direct reflection of our forward exam, or should relate to how well a student can do on that. So all of that process, which Ms. Brueggeman referred to earlier, we're kind of midway into that. And this has probably been the most consistent conversation we've had in the last 3 years to get to that. So yes, I think what we're doing is valid. And the one thing that we're quick to do is to change a resource, because we think a resource is the golden ticket. And it's not the golden ticket itself. The resource won't do that. It's the process that we use and the consistency that we stay with it. And that's really been our message in everything that we're doing, where what those standards are, what the expectations are, how we report that to families, how we measure that, and then how we adjust our teaching and the students' learning daily, but year to year is the hard part, because the daily can happen and we can see that growth, that individual growth. But when it comes to that yearly growth, it's hard to compare, because we're not comparing the same apple to the same apple. We're comparing an apple to an orange, because it's a different grade level, different kids. So that's why the data looks the way it does. But if you look at the growth of that student individually, yes, I think we're seeing great gains. And that's what makes this report hard, is because it's everybody together. Here's a percentage of the grade levels. So
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, Ms. Brueggeman. Item C, COVID report. Ms. Kulig.
Good evening. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give a recap of where our current COVID numbers are at this time. So as you can see, our 10-day rolling average of active positive cases is down to 21. When I reported last week, last board meeting, we're at 49. So we're definitely seeing a wonderful decrease there. Our vaccination rate, so individuals in the zip code 54656 that have received at least one dose, is up to 56.3. So again, we typically see under a 0.5 increase week by week in that area. And then our fully vaccinated rate for zip code 54656 is up to 53%. Next slide. So here again is the graphs that I showed at the last meeting. So this is our 10-day rolling average of active positive cases in the district. Again, you're seeing that trend decreasing. So as our daily cases are down and our count is down, we're going to continue to see that graph continue to go down as well. So even looking at today, we only had 15 active cases within the district. So the numbers are definitely going in the right direction for us. Next slide, please. And this is the graph again that looks at our daily new cases. And this number is really telling as to what COVID is doing in the district. And as you can see, we had that peak, for example, around the Omicron variant in that January to February. And now we're definitely seeing that decline happen again. So we're averaging right now typically between 1 to 5 new cases a day, which is very good to see that those numbers are coming down and headed in the right direction. Next slide, please. Any questions at all for me on the COVID update?
Questions from board members? All right, thanks, Ms. Kulig.
Thank you.
Item D, February is Career and Technical Education Month. I believe there is a short promo video.
Indeed, it is about 2 minutes long, and I'd like to thank Liz Wilcox for all her work on this. So roll the tech ed footage.
February is National Career and Tech Education Month, and Sparta has a lot to celebrate here. The Tech Ed program at Sparta Area School District is led by 5 experienced teachers whose combined years of service is more than 65 years. They are passionate about the student-centered, project-based learning activities and future career opportunities available for students. Introductions to the program begin in 6th grade, and by 8th grade, classroom activities offer hands-on experience using a plasma cutter, gas metal arc, oxy-fuel, and thermoplastic welding equipment. For high school students, classes available include wood, welding, machining, construction building, small engine, and the CNC program, just to name a few. The program opens up doors for successful students to obtain employment with local companies such as Nappy, Merrill, and Matthews. Community and board support is evident with recent approval of late purchases and the Western Technical College Partnership. Sparta is one of the only high schools in the area that partners with the technical college, where seniors complete an application, go through an interview process, and may receive a certificate or transfer credit from Western Technical College or the welding program. 15 welding days allow for ample work time for students to perfect the trade. Possible careers after high school include architect, electrical engineer, automotive technician, diesel technician, CNC operator, welder, or a demolition engineer, among many other career opportunities. The Tech Ed department is excited to see what the future has in store for students who excel in this program.
Questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to make a comment real quick to Dr. Van Duren and Ms. Wilcox and the rest of the directors. Thank you so much for the time and effort put into that video. We take a look at enrollment or anything else that we're trying to expand on and grow. We need stuff just like that put out into our community. So thank you so much for that opportunity.
More to come.
All right, next item up is the consent agenda. If anyone has anything they'd like pulled out, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll take a motion when you're ready.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Mr. Scholz, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We need a roll call vote on that.
Do we need roll call on consent?
We have something in the budget as well. $2 million.
I suppose we can. Roll call?
Mr. Burns Gilbert,
This is for consent approval,
Yes.
right? Okay, yep. Yeah, I, yes.
Mr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mr. LaCassie,
Yes.
Ms. Presswood,
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
Mr. Lyden.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Business, item A, discussion and possible action to approve a temporary board committee for budget reductions and forward direction.
I'll go ahead and take this one. All right. I think one of the things that I didn't clarify as well as I could have at the committee meeting is the timeline for finalizing our 22-23 budget. And it can be confusing when you're looking ahead, planning ahead as we do, to realize that right now we are talking about a budget that won't be approved until October, the end of October. So I just want to give that timeline, and particularly like right now, Ms. Hauser is deep into 2 fiscal years. And as we get more and more into spring, we will all be living in 2 fiscal years. And by the time we get to May, that's when the contracts start coming out. We're wrapping up 1 year and kind of moving toward another. So I think that's important to remember. Next slide, please. So as I thought about it, of course, the board can choose to do this however they would like. The option that I brought forward 2 weeks ago was to form a committee and discuss budget reduction recommendations prior to April 5th and bring those recommendations forward to the full board. The pluses of that, be good to have some fairly solid recommendations in front of the public before elections, and we would be able to involve at least some stakeholder or experts in that planning process. However, several deltas to that approach were brought up at the meeting. Agreement about the makeup of the committee members, the lack of time to involve as many stakeholders as we might like, and ultimately it rushes a process that really doesn't need to be rushed. And there's also then a lack of continuity in the process between the current board and the new board, because we know we will have some board turnover. So mindfulness about that transition is going to be a piece of this. Next slide. So option 2 would be to have the superintendent, directors, and the 2 board members that will eventually be on the committee develop a menu of potential budget reductions and bring it to the March committee for information only. This would be, rather than specific budget recommendations within the dollar amount of the reductions, this would be a larger menu. And what it would do, it would let the voters know about the possibilities for reductions without coming with some recommendations. And I guess I would analogize this to when we built Herman. When we were talking about the building, people wanted to see the building before the referendum was passed. And the reason that typically isn't done is because people end up voting for whether or not they like a building versus whether or not we need a new school. So this would be the same thing if we brought very specific things. We will do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. First of all, we can't do that because at the end of the day, it'll be the new board that does that, right? In October, and they may choose to do something completely different than what this group of 7 would prefer to do. Secondly, if we need to make those reductions need to be made without necessarily, with knowing what the possible scope of the reductions could be, but not targeted this program, that program. It's really easy to get into the weeds with this. I do think that waiting to have this process just allows for a more thorough stakeholder process with both our internal and our external stakeholders. And it would enable the process to start. We could start with that menu, get that basic information out there, and then transition to the new board. And then if the referendum does pass, there isn't a lot of wasted work bringing committees together and doing all of that. However, the delta for that is it does leave more ambiguity for a longer time. And I know that with the fatigue of COVID and a lot of ambiguity, people want answers for things. So that's a very real delta. My thought with option 2 is that, you know, when people say what's on the table, I've had the specific question, what is the 2.1 million you're going to reduce? And the answer to that is we have a $40 million budget. 2.1 million of that somewhere has to go if the referendum doesn't pass. And that's a decision that requires a larger process than myself and directors bringing it to the board and this group going, yay, nay, go cut something else. I mean, if we don't do this strategically, then we do risk putting in jeopardy the work that we have done and the money that we have spent previously, right? So if we do have to make these reductions, we want to do it in a way that maintains as much of our educational quality and our improvement processes as we can. Next slide, please. So, of course, this is your committee and you can do as you please, but the recommendation I would give is that option 2 facilitates a complete process with internal, external stakeholders and gives but yet it still gives the community some information about the ways the district may be impacted if the referendum is not passed.
Any questions from board members? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to go with option 2.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to go with option 2 for the budget reductions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-2. Item B, discussion and possible action to approve roof quote for Maplewood not to exceed $150,000.
So we brought the project to you at the last board meeting. This is for the Maplewood building, all of the shingle roof. It is on our long range plan for this year. And at the last board meeting, we had not received all of the quotes yet. We have a budget on the long range plan of $150,000. We are excited that a local contractor right out of Sparta was the lowest bidder and a decent amount under budget, which we also feel good about because that roof is pretty old. So we have some room for contingency should we need to replace some plywood or something like that as well. Laufenberg is also being gracious enough to go through some additional certification to extend the warranty on the roof beyond the manufacturer's 10 years. So there's a special program available there. So we will get a 20-year warranty on the roof as well. So we would recommend going with Laufenberg out of Sparta.
Questions from board members?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve Luffinger Construction for the 129 or the 150, not to exceed $150,000.
I don't think you need the not to exceed. You can just say you're going with Laufenberg Construction.
Sounds good.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Mr. Scholze to go with Laufenberg Construction for the Maplewood roofing quote. Roll call.
Mr. Schulze,
Yes.
Mr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mr. Lukasik,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lydon.
Yes.
Mr. Burns-Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0, one absent. Item C, discussion and possible action to approve allocating $50,000 of the Herman construction referendum money to a snowplow truck.
Would you like a summary, Mr. Lydon?
'Cause you-
I mean, I can probably do it.
Yeah, all the bids were there last week and
Yep.
we made the recommendation. Okay.
Yeah, the bids came in. Sleepy Hollow, Brennigan's out of Toma had two options, and Sleepy Hollow was the lower option. And I believe it also was that the truck was available much sooner as opposed to the Brennigan's option.
Is this the point where Ed suggested we call the city to help plow?
Yes, and I
Okay.
told him that Todd was going to kill him.
Just wanted to clarify that. If there's no further discussion, I move that we approve the purchase of the snowplow truck for Herman using the referendum money.
I will second that.
Just had one quick question.
Go
Are
ahead,
these
Kyle.
new trucks? Are these used?
No.
These are the price for new? Okay,
Government pricing.
cool.
Yeah, it'd be about $20,000 more for you.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, let me get that deal. No, that's awesome. I just want to, and the plow too, right? That's not, okay, good.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Solzy to approve the allocation from the Herman construction referendum money for a snowplow truck. Roll call.
Mr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasik?
Yes.
Ms. Presswood?
Yes.
Mr. Schulze?
Yes.
Mr. Lydon?
Yes.
Mr. Burns-Gilbert?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item D, discussion and possible action to approve policies in the Neola 5000 series.
There are a couple of changes based on the discussion from the committee. The first one is on policy 5516, and that's slide number 70. And what we did here is under number C, we did identify our district compliance officer is Ms. Kulig, so that the name is in there when somebody is going to the policy. And the second one is 5720. Yes, 5720. There was a question about and support policies, what that meant, what that was. So if I didn't capture the change correctly, please let me know, but did the strike through and support policies and just went to express opinions and ideas and take stands publicly or privately. So those are the two changes based on the discussion.
Questions from board members? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the listed policies in the Neola 5000 series as amended.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Lydon, a second from Ms. We'll do with Mr. Burns-Gilbert to approve the policies in the Neola 5000 series with the amended changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1, one absent. Item E, discussion and possible action to approve a leave of absence extension. Dr. Van Duren.
Yes, you received a letter in the board docs in the executive session from a staff member who had circumstances around a birth and was asking for the extended leave, and I did recommend that leave.
I'll make a motion to grant leave.
I'll second that. We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Mr. Lydon to approve the leave of absence extension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, one absent. Item F, discussion and possible action to approve the grants and donations.
Thank you. So for your approval, we have Sharota Education Fund donated $1,834.99 to the high school for tech ed supplies. And Jostens donated $2,258 to Herman High School for student needs. And Seven Rivers Robotics Coalition donated $2,000 to the high school robotics team. So those are the donations that are up for your approval this evening.
Make a motion to approve.
Second that.
We have a motion for Mr. Lukasik, a second for Mr. Schulze to approve the grants and donations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, one absent.
Would like to recognize the additional donors, please. And that would be the Knights of Columbus donated $360.47 to Southside for student supplies. The Kiwanis Club of Sparta donated $413.40 to Herman for flags for the Herman classroom. Stephen Matthews, in memory of Jeannie Matthews, donated $500 to Cataract for student needs. The Anonymous, $100 to the district for employee appreciation and a staff drawing. Jostens donated $569 to Southside for student needs. Kiwanis Club of Sparta donated $413.40 to Herman for flags for the classroom. Jostens donated $154 to Cataract for student needs. The Kiwanis Club of Sparta donated $500 to the weekend backpack program at the district level. The Methodist Church Kathy Lois Circle donated $25 to the district for the weekend backpack program. And Fred and Mary Von Ruden donated $50 to the district for the weekend backpack program. And the Delta Dental of Wisconsin donated $145 worth of water bottles to sales. So those are all very, very much appreciated. Very nice donations. And as a little extra, the backpacks are serving up over 100, putting together up over 100 backpacks each week. So
Quick
thank
question.
you to our community. Yes.
Is that Kiwanis donation, is that a duplicate or is that
Nope.
the two separate donations of the same amount?
I believe so.
Okay, and those were for US flags in the classroom, right?
Yes, but we will double check that.
Okay.
All right, thank you to all of our donors. It's much appreciated. Item G, meeting schedule and future agenda items. March 8th, March 9th, March 12th, 22nd.
I would like to point out our English language learner, our Spanish community. There's an informational meeting March 9th that is, we'll talk a little bit about the referendum or show a video that's translated. It's a chance for folks to meet board candidates. It's a chance for families to register students. So it's an event to kind of do the meet and greet and service what needs we can and find out how we can do more and better. So that's, everybody on the board is encouraged to come.
Go ahead, Ed.
We had that robotics meet. You know, I've asked before about having student involvement in our meetings, and you know, I think that would be a real good one to have at our next meeting. Maybe about a couple representatives for the robotic club to give their lowdown on it. Shows the success of our students. And lastly, we approved, you know, I forget the sections, but the woodworking and those folks, there were 4 teachers that came together in order to buy that machine, that
The engraver.
laser engraver.
Laser engraver.
I'd like to hear about that because that was a very successful partnership amongst the teachers, you know. If we could, you know, just have a.
And another one that's already on deck for next month too is the Lou, the interactive playground thing at Herman.
Oh, yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's up and running too. So we've already scheduled the presentation for that, but I'll add those other two to it too. Great call.
You know, that was kind of an expensive kind of ordeal for Herman over there. Would it be possible to maybe have our board meeting over there so we could see it? Or is that going to be too much of a hassle with
It-
the electronics and stuff?
That's where we were going. If you recall, we had an annual meeting there last year and the sound was horrific. So, and we don't have good, yeah, it's really not set up for that. That being said, if we'd like to do a demo, if you'd like to see it,
Yeah,
let me know
that'd
and
be
I'll
cool,
make sure you get over there. Yeah, we'll set that up.
That's all I got, Josh.
All right, H, announcements and information.
All right. So I do have some announcements, the first of which is open enrollment is now open. It is open until April 31st. And we are doing an active open enrollment campaign, full update at the next committee meeting. Our pre-K roundup was last week, and we had 102 students in 2 days register for pre-K, which is a higher number than we've had in a while. So that's very encouraging. This is one of those things that where this continuous improvement model, and you learn by doing. Each year, Southside gets a little bit better or puts a new twist on it. And this year, due to COVID mostly, they set appointment times. And that did a few things. First of all, you got a record of whoever's coming. So if the folks that missed the appointment, they were able to call and follow up. So the day after, I went in to check up on some things, and Diane had 4 or 5 envelopes from people that she was able to make an outreach call to and get them the application. So that was awesome. The second thing it does is it spreads out the people throughout the day, and it enabled our staff to take the walk-ins that came in too. So they were able to accommodate the crowd. And one of the neat things they do at this pre-K roundup is they do a little assessment of the student. So, if there's something you're concerned about, I actually had a parent reach out to me with an email thanking me for the pre-K roundup because parent was worried about some things with the child development and was able to talk to somebody who was able to assess and just to give some suggestions. So it's such a great resource and awesome. Also, like to put on families' radars, STEM camp is coming back. And if you haven't yet, put June 6th through the 10th on your calendar. So that was a big hit. That was part of our Department of Defense grant, and it's something unique to Sparta that we get to offer. So that's awesome. And as I was going through the list of celebrations, there's enough stuff here to keep us here for a very long time. But I will just point out a few things. Our lady wrestlers that went to state, Savannah Clark, Vanessa Gavilan. Our athletes of the month, Brock Connolly in wrestling, Grant Geyer in boys basketball, and Keegan Curran in hockey. And our January students of the month, Isis Gomez in art, business and marketing, Shannon Hoffman, English, Giovanna Lopez, family and consumer science, Lillian Weber, inclusion ed, Craig Goodnow, math, Shade Bunker, music, Mara Geiwitz, turn page, phys ed health, Lily Bloyer, science, Kira Markison, social studies, Ellie Erickson, student services, Thai class, tech ed and ag, Jaden Lietzau, and world languages, Elijah Williams. So just thank you to all those students. And if I mispronounced anybody's name, I apologize profusely and appreciate understanding with that. But our kids are doing great work, and it is so rewarding to see things back up and moving again. So that's what I got.
Josh, I got a comment.
Go ahead.
We talked about culture for our school district, and I just have to say that I'm amazed that Diane, Miss Riley, has grown that since I've been on the board, has grown that and developed a culture that is great. She and her staff are the entrance level into our school district. And with all the changes and everything that has been going on, her and her staff has really, really worked hard in order to get that culture into our students and to keep them coming. You know, the rest of the staff in the school district do an outstanding job, but I've seen big improvements since Southside and the reorganization since I have. So if you would please be so kind to pass on kudos to her and the staff, that would be great. Thanks, Josh.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, I don't want to be here any longer. I'll second it.
Second.
So we got a motion from Mr. Scholz, a second from Mr. Lydon to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.